Hi, and welcome back to another Evolve to Win show. This is episode 97. We're creeping up on 100.
We're getting close to 100. So your employees do not lack motivation. They likely lack clarity. And when you think about this, we're talking about employees because we're mostly in the space of professional, working with companies, but you can fill in the blank with anybody's name in there. So we could also be saying your children don't lack motivation, they lack clarity.
Right.
Or you don't lack motivation, you lack clarity.
No, I got that. I was watching a video with James Clear, and James Clear writes a blog, and he writes all about habits. And if you haven't ever seen any of his stuff, it's really cool. But I just watched a little clip of it. It was a 20-minute video, and I only caught maybe 5 minutes of it. And the one thing that he said, which really just made such an impact to me, for me, was that the reason people seem like they're not motivated is because the reality is that they are just not clear. They don't have the clarity on what they want or who's leading them and what they're being led to. So clarity is what actually creates motivation. And if you think about that, if you know exactly what to do, the step-by-step process of getting to where you want to go, and you know how it goes, it's not very difficult to become motivated to actually go out and get that. It's when there's confusion and there's a lot of different variables that are floating around out there, or you're questioning certain things, or however it works, that's what usually causes the lack of motivation.
Well, if you think about it, so lack of clarity, if there is no vision that people are shooting for, right? If there's not a big goal that people are after at work, then they will tend to be more caught up in their day-to-day, right? In the grind, in the whirlwind.
Sure.
And so, and that feels less than productive most times. That's
Right.
kind of when you've been at work all day long, you've been running around like a crazy person, and at the end of the day, you're like, I didn't get anything done. And it's because you're just doing that busy work. You find yourself checking emails and then responding to other people's urgencies, but not actually staying priority focused.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to bring in the statistics from the most recent Gallup poll on employee engagement, which were released at fourth quarter last year, 2018. And the good news is employee engagement levels in the United States have gone up. That's the end of the good news. The bad news is they're just horrible. The number of engaged employees is 34%. So that's approximately 1/3 of our employees in the United States are actually what Gallup considers engaged. What that means is they actually really care about their job. They would go the extra mile for their employer. They're fully excited and engaged in the mission of the company.
Right.
That's about 1/3 of our U.S. workforce. Now, the second category is employees who are disengaged, and that's 53%. So just over half of the employees in America are what we consider disengaged. And what that means is they're literally just showing up to get a paycheck. And this is the category that I think we're really focused on right now, because it's these people who are literally just going to work to get a paycheck. They're not really interested in the company itself or the mission of the company. They're not looking to go above and beyond by any stretch. In fact, it's the opposite. They're looking to do just the bare minimum to be able to get their paycheck.
Yes, but it's not their fault.
It really is. I'm going to agree with you there. It's really not their fault, because why would we let employees just show up without caring? I mean, I think that's a leadership issue. And the reason I know this is because the highest level of engagement levels are found among managers and executives. Okay. And so you're like, okay, that's really good news, except that number sucks too. That's 38%. So again, just over 1/3 of our managers and our executives are what we consider engaged. So how do these employees have a chance? Now let's go back and link this to what we think is really the culprit here and the cause.
So again, we were touching on motivation. So most people would say, looking at these employees that are disengaged, they would say they are not motivated employees, correct?
Yeah, they lack motivation. They literally are just doing enough
And
to get
looking
by.
from the outside in, you see a group of non-motivated employees. And you say, well, it's on them, right? It's on them because they're not motivated.
And you know that we are huge fans of taking personal responsibility. So I'm not going to pass the buck completely to leadership, but I do think that the leadership has the ability to do something about this, right? Yes, it's true that individuals should be self-motivated. This is true that everybody should take personal responsibility. And yet, if you're in a leadership position and you have somebody who is not taking personal responsibility for their own motivation, that's the time to step in. So let me get through the last statistic before I leave it, because there are people, I know there are people out here who are like really good at math. They're like, okay, she said 34% were engaged, 53% were disengaged, but what about the other 13%? So let me just fill in that blank. 13% of our US workforce are actively disengaged. And these are the people who hate their jobs. They're much more likely to steal from you, and they spend most of their working days trying to undermine those employees who are engaged.
Right.
So just so you have that full picture there. So it's interesting, the employees that are actively disengaged, they probably do have a vision, because it's not a good vision, but their vision is to sabotage the people who are doing a great job.
Yeah.
So let's focus more on that 53%. It's
Okay.
the biggest percentage of employees. In my opinion, these are the scariest employees because they fly under the radar screen. So most oftentimes, their managers and leaders don't even recognize the fact that they're disengaged because they keep showing up. They show up and they do their job and they get it done, and it's not enough, right, for a lot of managers to step in and say, okay, what do we need to do? How do we fix this?
Well, and there's not a lot of investment in them because they're doing a good enough job.
Good enough.
But we don't want them to leave because it's difficult to replace people.
Mm-hmm.
But they will keep someone around that just, if they show up every day and they sort of do their job, and even though they may not be motivated, it's better than not having somebody there at all.
Or at least you lie to yourself and tell yourself that. But think about what it's really doing to those employees who are engaged. I mean, when you've got an engaged employee and they're doing a great job and they're putting in the extra effort and they appear to be treated exactly the same as the person next door who's just barely showing up and just getting enough done to collect a paycheck, at some point, those motivated and engaged employees are maybe going to want to look somewhere else,
Mhm.
right? But so let me share, there was an article written in the Harvard Business Review a while back that where the authors were studying all of the statistics that the Gallup organization collects all kinds of information when they do this employee engagement study. And by the way, you can download it for free if you go to Gallup and search on employee engagement. So one of the authors of that article in Harvard Business Review, they had searched to find out if there was any correlation between managers and employees as it related to engagement. And they found one thing, and I think it's the most critical aspect of this whole study. It's like looking for the why. Why is this happening? Well, the one link that they found that was of significance is that managers who are great at coaching and developing others have the highest levels of employee engagement.
Great at coaching and developing others.
Yeah. So that is the key. And it takes these people who literally dove into all of the statistics to finally come up with that one link and that one correlation.
Yeah, but it makes sense. I mean, this is not brain surgery. Think about yourself if you're listening to this. If somebody that you work with, a boss or a manager or supervisor, if you've ever worked somewhere, and they have actually cared about you and your personal life and what's going on, your family, and where you're going and what your aspirations are, both personally and professionally and financially, don't you have a little bit more, don't you want to do a better job for that person than you would normally do?
Don't you think you might fall into the category of engaged employee? Because if you've got a boss who's that interested in your future, in your goals and your passion, that it's going to make you care more.
Well, and so, we talked about we are in the leadership realm of business. And if you can really boil it all down, leadership all down to just, to like a nutshell, it really is. It's just about pouring in and investing in people, authentically investing in somebody, actually caring about what that person who works for you is doing, not just at work, but personally, their family life. And it takes a lot of work to be a supervisor or a manager or a boss, to have to run a business and then to actually have to do that with your employees as well. But if you truly, based on the Gallup and based on John Maxwell, who's been doing this thing for 50 years, this is how you get results from people. You actually have to invest in them. And it's just not investing in them in training and technical skills. It's actually showing that you care about them. And that's what makes the difference.
And again, I want to say, whether you're leading employees because you're in a leadership role, maybe you're a volunteer leader and you're leading other volunteer leaders, or maybe you're a parent and you're responsible for leading your little ones or your teenagers, right? But again, it applies in every scenario. I want to share a recent something that one of our clients just did. We were just Friday in an all-day strategic planning meeting with a client. And one of the initiatives that they took on this year, they decided to get way more engaged with their employees. And really what Paul was talking about, on the level of really, truly understanding what's important to them. So they ran through this process and they asked every single employee what their personal, professional, and financial goals are for 2020. And so whoever was in a position of leadership would ask their direct reports. And then if the direct reports were in a position of leadership and they had employees in their team, then they would run that same exercise and ask their employees, what are your top personal, professional, and financial goals in 2020? And the feedback that they got too was really outstanding. They're like, gosh, I've never actually had a boss ask me or care about my personal goals and my financial goals, and get so involved that they help to create a plan and a path and support us and even hold us accountable for the goals that we've set out. So it's like,
they're not doing it like it's a performance review. If you've ever been through a performance review where the person who's just checking boxes just so they can say that they did it and it can get sent back to HR, they're actually doing it. And not only that, but they're holding the people the direct reports accountable for what their PPF, personal, professional, and financial goals are. They want them to succeed because, of course, if somebody is being held accountable and they're achieving these personal, professional, and financial goals, how much more likely will they be interested in the business and staying, like retention, just being a part, like appreciating the fact that somebody cares about them, and how excited are they when they hit their goals and somebody is there to celebrate those for them and with them. I mean, it really makes a huge difference.
It does. And, I want to share one other story that potentially you might relate to. And that is, I've got a couple of clients right now who are at their core problem solvers. Like they just, it's like a hammer looking for a nail. Anything that shows up that could be fixed, they want to fix. And yet I've helped them to sort of gain some insights lately that if they don't have enough clarity, again, going back to this clarity word, if they don't have enough clarity on what their big picture goals are, goals that they really want to win, goals that are truly compelling for them, if they're not focused on those compelling goals, guess what happens? They find smaller problems in the office that need fixing. Meaning there are relationships, there's somebody who's annoying them, or there's somebody who they don't get along with, or there's some other problem in one of their departments or someone else's department cross-functionally. So I want you to think about this. If you're one of those problem solvers, by virtue of being problem solver, it also means that you're very likely to have that competitive spirit, meaning you need a challenge in front of you at all times. And if you don't have a challenge in front of you, one that you choose, one that's truly compelling, then what happens is you're not solving the obstacles in the way of that big challenge. You're solving all the other obstacles that are probably completely and totally insignificant, that are not worthy of your time. And they're probably really annoying for you. So if you ever have that come up and you know you're one of those people, I would ask you to check your current goals in front of you. Are they compelling enough? Like, do you have clarity on that vision? I know for me, I'm one of those people. If I don't have a really important goal in front of me, I can absolutely get sidetracked and focus my attention on something that is just a complete and total waste of time and an energy sucker too. You know, that's not a good place for me. So not at all. So
That's funny.
Let me just ask this question of you, the audience. I want you to really think about this. Do you know the personal, professional, financial, relationship goals of those who work with and for you? You know, have you actually run through that exercise? Have you asked them? Do you know what they are? And I'm guessing until listening to this podcast, maybe it's something that you hadn't really thought of. It's not, I think, the natural. I don't think it's the norm. I think that's extraordinary leadership. And do you understand what the most important goals are for your kids in 2020? Like it's a great question.
That's a good start.
Do you have your own? That could be actually a really good place to start this conversation. Do you have your own goals that are really clear for 2020? Look, most people are not setting goals, and there are so many different reasons out there for why people don't set goals, but usually it has a lot to do with the way that they've learned to set goals in their past, or maybe haven't learned. Maybe they just haven't learned a system that works for them and their personality. And unfortunately, the old school way of setting goals is so, in my opinion, it's like mechanical. It's too complex. It takes too long usually. And it's so focused on the semantics of setting a goal, a SMART goal, that literally it just takes all the fun out of it. So if you're struggling at all with the system that you should use or the system that your kids use for how they set goals, we mentioned before in the last episode, you can go to winthequarter.com. We'll post that in the comment section as well. Go to winthequarter.com, and we put together a free 3-part series because we want to help you get that kind of clarity so that you stay focused in 2020, so that you can have this thing called motivation and engagement. So please do go there. And here's a really interesting text that I got the other day. Reese, who is 11 years old, was short on funds, and she really wanted to have something that an 11-year-old needs. So her mother decided to have her watch video number 1 in the Win the Quarter program, and paid her $20 if she would watch video 1. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's brilliant. So next thing you know, she sends me a picture of cute little Reese with a notebook full of notes. Now, she didn't even tell Reese to take notes. She thought that she would just get the kid to sit down and watch that video 1. But not only did Reese sit down and watch the video, she took all kinds of notes and was learning about goal setting and was learning about how important it is, and was also learning about the excuses that most people make about why they don't get that kind of clarity for themselves. It was the cutest thing ever. And so the comment that Lynette made to me was, can you imagine at the age of 11 understanding some of the concepts about how important it is to have that kind of clarity in your world? Yeah. So don't think that children are too young to understand this. Oh my gosh, they're probably way better at it than we are if given the right system, right?
Yeah. Just to just sum this conversation up, this podcast up, it's really about investing in others. It's about authentically caring about what goals your direct reports, if you're a supervisor, manager, or a boss, to make sure that you are finding out what's important to them, finding out what their goals are, makes all the difference in the world. And that truly is leadership. So don't be confused by when somebody says leadership, what does that actually mean? Or you think of, I think with guys, you think a lot of military, or you think of like military generals, or like in sports, coaching, different types of leadership. Those coaches and those military people are also pouring into them. But in a job related, like, you just know people come to work and they just aren't motivated. And a lot of times it's just because they don't have the clarity both for themselves personally and for what the leader actually wants to get out of running that company. So it's important to really make sure that you're pouring into those people.
And by the way, it's pretty amazing that I was just looking up a statistic on my phone and lost that last thought. So let me just go to my statistic. One more statistic from the Gallup poll. When we dug a little bit deeper, we found that only 22% of employees believe that leadership has a clear direction for the organization. So think about that. That's only about 2 in 10 people. So think about 2 in 10 employees actually think that their leadership knows where they're going. And you know what? I don't know how far off that is. But the reality is, even if leadership knows the direction, a lot of times the communication just doesn't make its way all the way down.
Yeah.
And so what we're suggesting is that there's a vision that the leaders are really committed to and clear on, that they're sharing and communicating in a way that people really get it. That is so, so important. Then the other piece of it is really understanding the drive, the passion, the vision that each of the employees has, because outside of work, right, there's always the professional angle and what they need to do at their work, which is such a big part of life. But then a lot of times what causes the biggest issues are the areas outside of work. What's going on in their personal world? Everybody's got some sort of what I call background music. There's some sort of story. Most people are coping with some sort of trauma or tragedy or just major challenge in their lives, personally or in their relationships. So by taking a leadership role, finding out what it is that people are up to this year, you will be doing them such an amazing service, not only to help them really get committed and get clear so that they can be motivated and excited this year, but it's also going to show them that you care. And that makes just a huge, huge difference. Yep. All right. All right, so that's a wrap. It was great to be with you. Thanks so much for coming back again. And please feel free to leave us a comment, share this if there's someone who you think needs to hear this. And please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app if you haven't already. The show is called Evolve to Win, and you can find it on your podcast apps. And you can also find it if you prefer watching on video. Our YouTube channel has all of our past episodes. So awesome to be with you today.
And just to remind you of the Win the Quarter program, if you're watching this on Facebook, go ahead and click on the link and you can go and get that program. You can, even if you're not going to do it yourself, send it to somebody who you think needs it. And if you're listening to this podcast, just go to winthequarter.com and you can get it. I hope you have a great day. Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye now.